Cool.
First things first, Alabama State Bar Rules of Professional Conduct, Rule 7.2E requires the following language in all attorney communications. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele, backwoods Southern lawyer. Everybody sound off.
Okay, Paul Rip here with the Rip Report, ripreport.com and Baldwin County Legal Eagle.
Rains Russian, Houston Section Chief for Backstory Podcast, giving it to you live from East Texas.
Giving it to us, all right.
Make sure to drink water.
Was that Alexa telling you to do something?
Yeah, that was my reminder to drink water.
I like it. All right, so I'm going to try to share my screen real quick.
All right.
And no, I need to present. That's what I want to do. And I want to take a look at this. And boom. You guys seeing that?
Yep.
All right, so does everybody agree that's the latest and greatest?
Well, the numbers I got this morning, wow, that's Alabama?
Yeah.
I lost it just as
I I refreshed it.
Okay, yeah, that's what I had right there. Well, Rains, I told you that was a reading from this morning. So it was 13:15 this morning. It's 13:52 now. Reported deaths this morning were 21. It's 34 now. Wow.
And you see Baldwin there.
Yes. Now that was from the Lieutenant Governor's task force that and these were his projections from March 25th of 2020. Those are the projections that I'm reading, not the one Harry's putting up.
All right, so give me a second, and I think I can get you that too. Let's see here.
Well, that's cool. That other one you had is more up to date, it looks like.
Yeah, I think that's it. Have you seen this?
That's the one that's the same one. Go all the way down. Doesn't he have a chart on there?
No. Well, yeah, there it is.
There it is right there. Now, for those that can't see the screen but are listening, what is important with this is that these, like I said, these are projections by the members of the Alabama COVID-19 task force put out March 25th by the Lieutenant Governor, Will Ainsworth. He's kind of going against the governor here on several things, trying to get her attention. Would be surprised to see him run in the next election. But anyway, in the his projections are not too far out, but let's jump ahead. And if his projections are totally true, then by May 1, the projection for May 1 is that there will be 245,499 cases in Alabama with an ICU patients of 6,382.
All right, so let's talk about that for a sec.
Okay.
So we
Go
know
back to ventilators.
That's right. Ventilator. We run out of ventilators. We only have 800 ventilator beds available in Alabama. Now we have 1,200 ventilator beds, but 500 of them have people who routinely are in need of a ventilator, and they're on them. So what are we looking at, Paul?
That would make us running out of ventilators somewhere around April 21st for the state of Alabama.
21st.
Right.
All right, I'm giving you the screen back.
Okay. The other thing I want to say personally, especially with the experiences that I've had with VA is, man, I just want to thank the nurses and doctors and first responders, but particularly the nurses, because they're the very front line. I was very happy to see a public support and Fairhope for Thomas Hospital. Cars would show up flashing their lights a couple of times this last week. I know that's all inspiring to the hospital and staff. And just imagine yourself in that position of having to go to work. Well, you now know your life is at risk with
Hey,
one
Paul.
simple mistake.
Paul, can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
If everybody had done their job, we wouldn't be calling these people heroes. They'd be going to work just like it was any other shift. Now, it's very heroic to walk into a room with a patient you know is probably going to get you sick, because the hospital administrator and the hospital board and all these penny pinchers didn't do their jobs to make sure that when something like this happened, that these people would have the proper protective equipment, and it would have just been another day at the office caring for sick people. But because people didn't do their jobs, yes, these people are being called on to do something very heroic and unnecessarily.
I think in the deep South, we're all the way from Texas across, we're so used to tornadoes and hurricanes that's we got our focus on that. That's our emergency floods, and this hadn't come up before, which is lacking. I mean, we should have been fully prepared for this. We were warned as early as late December, early January. Now, Alabama still is, not taking the step to stay in place. Now, shelter in place. One thing that did happen late yesterday evening in the Baldwin County area is Mayor Wilson of Fairhope wrote a letter to Governor Ivey, State Health Officer Scott Harry, Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth, imploring them to institute a statewide shelter-in-place order before the COVID-19 surge. The city of Fairhope has been very proactive with the decisions in an effort to ensure our citizens' safety, especially with Fairhope's higher than average senior citizen population. However, relying on each city to make its own decision will not effectively flatten the curve. We'll get through this together.
Did you say thin the herd or flatten the curve?
Flatten the curve.
Oh, I thought you said thin the herd in Fairhope.
No, flatten the, well, that'd take a little bit more. But we'll get through it together, but it's going to take all of us together to do something. When you look at other municipalities, such as Bay Minette, I think they're very lacking. Hardly anything been done at all. Look at Orange Beach.
Can I share my screen with you for a second?
You can and look at Orange Beach, who allowed all those people on Robinson Island and Bird Island, as well as several other locations, just because they were island. I hope those people, nobody gets sick, but those types of congregation is exactly what we're trying to avoid.
So there is a service called MuniCode, and back when the internet first came around and people didn't have their own servers, cities would upload their official copy of their ordinances or code of ordinances to this MuniCode. And so anytime you want to go find your local code of ordinances, Fairhope, Robertsdale, wherever, you can go to MuniCode. And so this is Chapter 7, Civil Defense and Disaster Relief. And if you'll notice the dates on here, you'll see that all this was codified in 1980, which, as Raines can tell, I don't know where you were during Frederick. Paul, were you around here?
Nope, I was living in Belize, Central America.
So you didn't get all the fun, but I sure remember it, and I'm sure Raines does. So anyway, this is an ordinance that was passed that says we will immediately formulate plans for all these different scenarios, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the second one down is epidemic. And they still don't have a plan. And, what do you say when you call the city and you say, hey, can I have a copy of the civil defense plan? Now, let me, I'm going to share with you another page so you can see what they sent me. Now, this is a copy of their I guess you call it in an emergency.
Yeah, I can't read that.
Is it too small?
Yeah, way too small.
Is that better?
That's better, but
Yeah.
you still got to do a little better.
Okay,
Just-
so
There you go. There you go.
so we are in an ESF 8, Health and Medical Services, providing assistance for public health and medical needs. Lead agency, U.S. Department of Public Health. Right? Everybody
Right.
agree that? Yeah.
Yeah,
So the
hurricane.
plan. So the plan is a hurricane manual. It has nothing. It talks very little about shelters, and there was just one blurb in the whole document. But anyway, it's on the City of Bay Minette's website under COVID-19, and it's the hot link is emergency plan, inclement weather and emergency plan, and it does speak to an ESF 8 event, but gives no direction what to do. I'm talking about where we're going to have pest tents, where we're going to try to feed people. Is it going to be a straight up shelter in place? Are we going to try to do some things before the hospitals are overrun, or are we just going to react like the governor of the state of Alabama has decided to do?
Well,
Let me put in something here, just so y'all have a little bit of a frame of reference before we get too deep into this. Does your county have a plan for multiple aircraft crashes?
Yes.
Okay. Does your county have a plan for a meteor strike?
Yeah, it's all covered under general localized event or something like that. Yeah.
I guess my point is, while yes, the federal government and most state governments have been unfailingly poorly prepared for this, I kind of look at this like I look at Hurricane Katrina. You can have all the plans you want, but you get a storm like a Katrina come in, and there's not a whole lot you can do besides be as ready as you can for it. Now, I'm going to 50-50 this. 50% of this lies on the ill preparedness of the federal government and the state governments on how to handle this, because we haven't dealt with something like this in a century.
Right.
The other 50% is we haven't dealt with something like this in a century. And how could you honestly dust off the old civil defense manuals and expect to be prepared for a modern day killer pandemic? I just don't think it's realistic to hold our state governments and even our federal government too terribly accountable, because good grief, they had all the preparedness they could get after Hurricane Katrina, and they still completely ass raped that.
Well,
Yeah.
and let's talk about what Katrina taught us. Katrina taught me that nobody gives a shit about the Gulf Coast. And until it gets on CNN with a bunch of people dying of thirst at the Superdome, of course, this is a completely different scenario. I mean, of course, New York and Portland are getting ships, hospital ships. We will forever be the 49th or 50th state, as will Mississippi, and nobody really cares about us. And we've got to take care of ourselves. And these local government officials are doing nothing to prepare for the worst. They're looking to the state government, and they're kicking the can to the county EMAs, and it's poor leadership.
I think there's that's it. That's it right there. That's the key word.
And there's going to be a public indictment of these the North Baldwin Hospital hospital board. I believe South Baldwin has one too. And these people were in charge of tax money. They were supposed to make sure that the for-profit infirmary health didn't put us in a situation like this, and they all failed miserably. So guess who some of our greatest hits are on? Same people we've been talking about, all on this North Baldwin Authority. The mayor, the city attorney, old Puddinhead Paget, the usual suspects. The guys that are on things so they can say they're on it, and they go eat rubber chicken and bullshit for an hour.
Well,
you know
it's
what I mean?
kind of, I agree with what Raines is saying, but also what you touched on is true too. It's very, very hard to prepare for something like this. However, when it does happen and it is in your face, That's when you start looking at who's got the leadership and who doesn't, who can pick up the ball at that point and say, okay, look, this is a problem. Admitted, this is what we're going to do. And that's where I look at people like Mayor Wilson sending the letter on her own as a mayor, for her community. You got, and then of course you got Jerry Carl over there, who's elected and working every day over there, trying to get ahead of it, because this is not only a health issue, this is a very big economic issue, and there's a lot of side things that are going to come up that no one is anticipating.
Well, the tack that Kay Ivey has taken during this pandemic shows me that the Business Council of Alabama completely controls the governor's office.
And that's just about every state below the Rust Belt, to be honest with you. Texas, believe it or not, has our governor, who I absolutely abhor, has actually made a lot of good, informed decisions. Our lieutenant governor, on the other hand, I hope he tries to run for office, because he's the one that went on national television and said, the elderly, pay attention, the elderly should sacrifice themselves during this trying time and get out there and replace the essential workforce, since they're all going to die anyway. He literally said that.
No, I heard that. I heard that interview. I couldn't believe it. What's a few dead old people, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you this. If there's one thing that's going to happen from all of this, is that leaders will emerge.
Correct.
I'm here to tell you, somebody is going to take hold of it, whether it be in Baldwin County, in the city of Bay Minette, or the state of Alabama. Someone's going to take hold of the reins, and they're going to say, all right, the BS stops here. I'm calling the shots. Y'all can indict me when it's over with, but this is what we're going to do, and they'll solve the problem. Back during Hurricane Camille in 1969, Harrison County, Mississippi had a civil defense director named Wade Geis. That man was the Hurricane Mississippi Messiah. That man saved more lives and caused more things to get rebuilt fast than anybody else. There were mayors, county supervisors, the board of supervisors of the neighboring counties allowed the Harrison County civil defense director to be in charge. He basically just took over the whole southern part, or the 3 coastal counties of the state, because he knew what he was doing. And he said, look, I'll take whatever lumps come from Jackson. I'll take whatever lumps come from Washington, but I'm going to save the Gulf Coast. And he did it. When we had Hurricane Ike here, we had Judge Emmett, because we have a little bit of a different system here. We have a county judge that becomes kind of a Caesar during disaster declarations.
Yeah.
They do the same thing. And he took up the reins and said, we're going to get through this. Look at General Honoré in New Orleans after Katrina. He finally took over and said, we're going to make things right. We're going to get this under control. Leaders will emerge. They're trying right now. And if you identify one, let them know you're behind them.
Yep.
So, Raines, what was the name of the city council member in over in Florida that flipped his lid about the spring breakers a couple of weeks ago?
Oh my gosh. I reached out to that guy on Twitter. I can't remember his name. It's off the top of my head. It's like Eamon Heath or something like that.
Yeah, it was the city of
Lakeview.
Fort Worth Beach, Florida.
Yeah, it's Lakeview, city of Lakeview. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, it's gonna prove out that he was a leader when nobody else was. I promise you that.
That's the truth.
We need to give him a little more time, camera time.
I think some of the municipalities that are operating under city administrators, I think they have a little bit better chance than all that weight just being put on the mayor.
All right, so let's talk about this for a second. Typically, your city administrator, city manager is going to be somebody probably in their at the youngest in their mid 30s. So chances are, if they've been around from one state to another, or one county or city to another, they've been through some kind of disaster. and typically whoever's designated civil defense director or EMA director works for that manager. Now, when you go hire a manager or somebody to be your city administrator, and you hire them because they're one of your buddy's wives, you're probably not getting the quality and experience that you're paying for. And that's all I'll say about our city administrator here in Bay Minette.
Well, now in Fairhope,
Never been a city administrator before, is what I'm
right,
getting.
right, and in Fairhope,
I'm sure she's a fine CPA.
Right. Well, in Fairhope, the mayor has tried several times to get a city administrator, and the council has voted it down simply because the council wanted to hang on to power. But
well,
that's
you let Wayne get away, which I'm glad the county got him. But
right. Well, I don't blame Wayne for
what a goof, what a monumental F up on the part of the Fairhope City Council to have. What they had was they had Seabiscuit out there pulling a plow.
Yeah. Well,
and they had no idea.
Well, now this is the same council that voted themselves full family insurance. So I hope everybody that's thinking about insurance out there right now,
when you're thinking no, Paul, what they need to be thinking is while these bastards were taking care of themselves, they could have been spending that money on a medical stockpile for the city of Fairhope.
Well, just think what would have happened if the mayor hadn't stepped in and said something about the Arts and Craft Festival. We had 200,000 people float into town because the sponsor, as well as two of the council, Burrell and Brown, were for it. Brown was for the art festival all the way up until the last day. Just contemplate what would happen if all of those people had showed up at one time in Fairhope.
Well, the way that all this works is everybody has to be compliant, or the shutdown is for naught, or theoretically.
Correct.
So when you got when you got people, and I don't want to say overreacting, I probably would have done the same thing. But when they shut down the damn Fairhope Pier, you can certainly stay 100 feet away from somebody on the Fairhope Pier, depending on how many people are down there. But then you have people erring on the other end of the spectrum. There's 400 people on Robinson Island right now in center console boats out there floating around drinking beer, and the city of Fairhope, the city of Orange Beach, didn't do anything about it.
Now, they should be doing something about it immediately. Is that still going on?
I don't have. Somebody could look at the Carib and check out their webcam real quick. They got one of those little webcams like the weather stations look at. The Carib's got one, and you might be able to turn that thing around and make it look at Robinson Island. I'm not sure. That's how I looked at it the other day, and there were a pile of people out there.
There's a couple of things that through this CARE Act, which is the $2.2 trillion that we've put out, there is, for those of you out there, a small business disaster loan. This is covered on the RIP Report, ripreport.com. If you want to go to it to get the links, it's an SBA loan. It's a streamlined process. It has a limit of about $10,000. And those of you in small business, I encourage you to look at that and see if you can't, if that doesn't help you. There's also, we posted on the RIP Report as well, I think on Backstory, cliff notes for the COVID-19 CARE Act and what it means to you. These are very good. It covers from one end to the other any questions that you may have. For instance, one of them I found very interesting is that some mortgage companies will waive the mortgage payment. However, people need to be very careful when they look at these plans and what's available, because under the mortgage plans, I've seen some of them where the grace period was 4 months. However, on the 5th month, you had to pay back the 4 months, that you didn't pay. So that doesn't really help you. In fact, that kind of compounds the problem if you're having to make 5 months of payments at one time. So you'll need to read the small print, but and also it's going to be a little worrisome as to how fast they get some of these checks out. But those of you that are really paying attention to your finances may want to start researching what is available and what is covered under the CARE Act.
So everybody needs to go to Backstory Podcast Facebook page and check out the links. Pretty simple. Today is today's April 3rd, correct? First day that first round of the SBA loans. I think independent contractors and those type of folks can't submit their applications for another 2 weeks, I think. So yeah, this will be the first round, and I wanted to share my screen again just so we could get this on the record.
So we are over 1 million cases.
Good
Yes.
God.
And remember 2 episodes ago, we had just overtaken China, and we went from 80,000 to 245,000 in like no time.
Well, New York City is anticipating 6 more days, and they're out totally of ventilators and out of equipment. So, dear God, I don't know what's going to happen then.
All right, so let's talk about something. Range, you're a Navy guy. Tell me, okay, so a couple things going on with the military. The captain of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, Brett Kosher, who sent a 3-page letter to, who would he have sent that to? Just the Pentagon or Pacific
Well,
Command,
the problem that he
whoever?
got into, the problem I think he got into is that the military has a very strict code of chain of command.
All right, so let's go back. Let's go back to what Rain said, Paul. You can't have it both ways. Rain said leaders will emerge, and this
That's
guy's
correct.
worried about the people on his boat, and he's telling these dipshits that we're not going to be combat effective unless you get these people off this boat, disinfected, care for the sick, and then we'll be back at sea lickety split.
Oh, well, I think that what give me 1 second, Rains. I think that what happened here is that he had made that determination ahead of time and said, I'm going to get somebody's attention. I'm going to get it at one time. And if it means they're going to kick me off this ship, that's what's going to happen. And they had a standing ovation for him when he left. And I think he went down for his sailors and for his ships. But I'm saying they're using the excuse of the proper chain of command as far as why they let him go. Me personally, I'm on his side. I think it was a brave move. Sorry, Rains, go ahead.
No, I just was going to say what Paul said. He knew what he was doing. That letter, if he was following proper procedure, any letter he wrote about casualties on his ship and combat effectiveness would have gone to the commander-in-chief of his fleet and then gone up the chain through the Department of the Navy and up to the Joint Chiefs. It would not have been, we'd have never seen it. It'd have gone to you don't write a letter to the White House and CC the New York Times on it unless you're trying to blow the whistle on something. And so I admire the man for his courage, but at the same time, everybody that says, oh, it's a disgrace for getting rid of him. Well, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was getting into, and he's jumping on his sword to try to really get that out there. But yeah, there was no hope for this guy once he did that.
All right. So let's talk about
All
right. So let's talk about something else that's going on. So if I'm the Secretary of the Navy, and I got the captain of the Theodore Roosevelt saying we're combat ineffective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call every damn ship that I have, and I'm going to say, hey guys, is anybody sick on this boat? And if they say no, I'm going to say, do not come back to port. which is what I think is going on. Did y'all see what happened day before yesterday in our COVID-19 update? The president announced that he's dispatching the Atlantic Fleet to the Caribbean to fight the drug cartels. I mean, I think it's a big smoke screen for we want to give these guys something to do because we're not letting them come back to port.
We've been running interdiction. The United States Navy has been running interdiction missions in the Gulf of Mexico since the early 1980s.
Right.
What happens is you get a ship like I'm very familiar with. It's no longer a ship, but the USS Stephen Groves, a frigate. You take it out there, and it basically acts. It uses its AWACS and its Aegis system as a giant radar to patrol the whole area. And anything that's in that area, you stop. You send the Coast Guard in to interdict with. You do some boarding. Very little of that though, because it's really hard to. It's really a pain to board off of anything bigger than a destroyer. But interdiction's been going on for 30, 40 years now. And as far as quarantining on ship, that's very likely what's happening. Norfolk is a cesspool, and so is San Diego. And I say that because it's full of places where, from a virus standpoint, from an epidemiology standpoint, they're just cesspools. They're waiting for communication. So what you do, you put all your sailors on ships and you get them out to sea. That way, and I know this sounds terrible, but you establish a baseline for who's sick and who's not. And you get ships full complement of crew and say, all right, I got X amount sick. I'm quarantining the rest on both sides. We're running half watches, and you treat at sea. Believe it or not, that's a very viable solution to that issue. And you don't announce that we're combat ineffective to anybody, for crying out loud. Yeah. Oh my God, that needs to be out of everybody's minds. Right now, we are, as a national fighting force, probably at about 10-15% combat effectiveness. So let's not broadcast how bad it's gotten to the entire planet,
Well, I love the smoke screen that we're taking back the Caribbean.
Oh, that's all your damn blasted orange-headed son of a bitch that's up there doing all that gaslighting narcissistic pariah.
Uh-oh.
Hold
on, right. Yeah.
Don't say mine. All right, so Paul, tell me about this. While we're all in lockdown, didn't you say they're going to round up all the undocumented people and throw them out?
Well, no, what I was talking about was that, they have the money plan to try to get money out to everybody. And you've got undocumented workers and workers that are here that are legally working under work permits and stuff that contribute to the tax base, but they haven't been addressed yet. And they'll be in the poorest of the poor. And they're the ones that get hurt the most, is the people with the least amount are the ones that are going to get hurt the most. And these food banks, I saw where one of the largest food banks in the United States says that they're taxed, that they've never been at this position ever. And here we are going into what is supposedly the 2-week trial time here to see what the virus is actually going to do. So the stress on the food banks and the stress on the very poor is going to be tremendously harder than on the middle class and other people that may be able to make it through. They're the ones that are going to need the most help from charities, food banks, and churches, etc.
Well, let me interject this, because you mentioned a lot of them are here on work programs. There is a program, the H-2A program, through the Department of Immigration and the Department of Labor, that allows for a business to bring in a certain amount every year of undocumented labor,
right?
As long as they provide for them. And one of the commandments, a part of the code in that H-2A agreement is that the employer will furnish any and all medical care needed. and pay for any and all medical care needed while those workers are in the employ, because they can't legally be in the country unless they're an employee of a large farm or something like that. Now, that's the H-2A program, which is agricultural. The H-2I is industrial, and that covers more housekeeping staffs in big casinos and hotels and things like that for the most part, and some construction. In the H-2A program, which I'm familiar with, they are the business owner and the person providing the work for these undocumented people are required to provide medical care and medical assistance and a certain standard of living for them. So people that are here under that, their responsibility lies on basically the person who's in charge of them. And so they shouldn't be taxing food banks. They shouldn't be taxing our medical services. They should be having the farmer or the factory farm owner who's employing them taking care of them. And if you know of something like that, let us here at Backstory Podcast know about it. And I guarantee you, we'll chase some folks down and make sure that's getting paid.
We'll put on our green jumpsuits and ride around. And
But Paul's absolutely true about there's a lot of people out there that aren't here under that program. Hell, there's people living in dirt floors in Atmore, Alabama right now.
Right, I'm sure.
That don't have access to any of this stuff. Who's going to look out for them? I can tell you, nobody. It's going to be the churches. It's going to be the local organizations. It's going to be, it's going to be your local Cub Scout pack that's going to be providing meals for these people, because the federal government and state government is apparently not going to do it.
Well, okay, so let me talk about a few things real quick that I wanted to tick off.
All right.
And you can there's information on my Twitter, which is at BackwoodSouth2, or on our Facebook page, Backstory Podcast. The Coronavirus Paid Leave Act, which affects all small companies with fewer than 500 employees, requires you to pay your employees some benefits. Got some things about that on there. Oh, how about this, Raines? Gulf Shore's Director of Recreation and Cultural Affairs, Grant Brown, says it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but city leaders have done everything the governor and state ask and have instructed them to do. Now, guess what the question was? This is the Final Jeopardy. Did you guys F up by not closing the beach earlier?
Duh.
It's easy to Monday morning quarterback this thing. We've been saying it since. So do you know the first time we talked about coronavirus was like back February 15th? And February 29th, we made fun of the Alabama legislature because they did declare a public health emergency, and they said it was pornography. And now, now that 50,000 people are possibly going to die. Here's another thing. The city of Gulf Shores canceled Hangout Fest yesterday.
Yeah, they were going to try to make that work no matter what, but they finally had to let it go.
Alabama schools are going to reopen to teachers.
But as you see, it's a beautiful day. The beaches are open, and people are having a wonderful time. Amity, as you know, means friendship.
It means friendship with a love making with a shark.
Yeah. Well, the other one that gets me is some churches insisting to be able to stay open and have church services, and I'm going like, holy mackerel! There's a choir in I think it was Washington State, and they had a group, pretty good sized group, like about 30 people. And they were practicing social distancing. They were washing their hands. They were doing everything they could do. Most of the entire group got the virus and 2 died. And that's because they're all in there singing, huffing and puffing and pushing it out of their lung. And so it can be airborne, not only by droplets, but by what they think could be airborne. So any type of congregational event like that is just... it's just exacerbating the problem. So how the churches think this is going to wash and they're immune to this, I have no idea. It just baffles me.
So guess what idiot has come up, has raised his hand and said, "I'll be the biggest idiot in Alabama"?
Roy Moore.
Yes, Roy Moore. He has offered to represent these churches for free in a federal court where they're not going to let anybody in. Y'all do realize that these things will be taken up after the pandemic's over with.
Correct.
Okay.
You want to go to church and you want to congregate with people of similar beliefs, that's fine. You go. But don't you go to the hospital when you get sick. You better go back to that damn church and ask them to heal you. You dumb bastard.
Right. Well, now.
Okay. So one more thing, Paul. And the reason that Grant Brown was having to defend the idiots that he works for is there was a report out of the University of Wisconsin in Madison where on March 13th, a group of students came down to Nashville and then moved their trip down to Gulf Shores on the 16th. And now they're all back home in Wisconsin and everybody's got coronavirus.
Right. So
I remember when you go to Panama City Beach for spring break and all you'd come back with was chlamydia. Now you got to worry about the damn corona.
Yeah, really. I didn't get that in Panama City, but I did get some other stuff.
I remember Caches. Do you remember Caches?
Oh, yeah. That's still in Caches is in what is that right before Fort Walton?
Fort Walton Beach, yeah.
Yeah, Fort Walton Beach. Right. You want to get to some lanyap stuff?
Yes, sir. Please do.
All right. One of the things that I thought was very interesting on the inside front page, and again, like to encourage everybody to pick up a lanyap. Their advertising budget is surely taking a beating right now, and we desperately need the news. Corona articles are not on their paywall, so you can go to see them. But inside the front page is coronavirus 19 has hurt businesses. Has your business been ordered closed by the state of Alabama or any other civil authority? Do you believe that you have business interruption insurance coverage? Now, a lot of people have that coverage and don't realize that they do, and that covers storms and different events such as that. So you may want to really check your insurance and see just what your rights are. This is by, and this is not a solicited or paid ad that I'm reading, that I'm supporting. It's Milam and Milam. He was my attorney on a couple of cases, and I would recommend him if you fall into that category and you're not sure whether you have interrupted insurance coverage. Quite likely in this area. Another lanyap one is the Port Pork massive stimulus package includes dredging funds. That's by Gabe Times. A lot of people don't really understand that the coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security, called the CARES Act, the $2 trillion act, in section 14003, out of 140,000 words, our Richard Shelby, senator, who is known for the pork that he brings home, even though he's opposed to it everywhere else, put in 111-word appropriation for the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. That trust fund has been held and divvied out very slowly. It was organized in 1986, and it's accrued almost $9.3 billion. And so out of this, the government separately through the CARES Act, the CARES Act, which is the largest spending bill ever passed by the federal government, it's going to provide residents with adjusted rates. It goes into how much each individual is going to get, business or whatnot. The state and local governments this is the part that worries me, Raines. State and local government, especially if you remember the BP era and Mr. Boom Boom Pittman around here, state and local governments were awarded $150 billion which includes a minimum of $1.5 billion for each state and $8 billion set aside for local governments. Now, you're talking about the good way to have some abuse. That's it when you have that kind of money floating around. So we're going to have to pay attention to how our state uses the money. The other one that I had is the Beltway beat. And like in Lanyap, folks, there's many, many articles. We're just going over a few and telling you what's going on. Suggest that you get it to read the different articles involving different municipalities. The Beltway beat by Jeff Poore. Don't expect Ivy to let the coronavirus crisis go to waste. And some of you may remember Ron Emanuel. He said, never let a serious crisis go to waste. And what I mean by that is an opportunity to do things that you couldn't do before. And I have seen people use emergencies, be it mayors or governors, where they were able to get some things done that they couldn't prior. Now, the two things that Ivy would be looking for is her administration under the leadership of her chief of staff, Joe Bonner, can move nearly $1 billion worth, can build nearly $1 billion worth of prisons without the input of the House, State House right now, because they're not in session. And another thing that they could be looking at is Medicaid expansion. Both of those they've not been able to get off the ground floor. Now, the Medicaid expansion, people remember several years back, Alabama was to receive $3.2 billion, but we refused it. We refused to take any of it or participate. We left all $3.2 billion on the table. And now our hospital systems, especially our rural systems, are paying for it. And there's maybe Ivy will roll and try to do something on one of the two, because as you know, we're mandated by the federal government to do something with the prisons, and the healthcare system, of course, is the same throughout the entire United States. But those that didn't jump on the Medicare bandwagon, I think, are going to regret it. Now, the other cover story in Lanyap, and I think this is very important to people, and they should be paying attention to it, because we're just into this a week or so, folks, in the South. There's people been in this 2 or 3 weeks. The longer you're sitting still, the more stir crazy you're going to get. You need to know that your life is changing. Your schedule is going to change, and you need to occupy yourself with something besides just worrying. What are your daily routines? How are you going to do homeschooling, the permanent changes, and how can local companies and local people help other people, or how can you help other people? Now, this is Life and Time of COVID-19. Dale Leash and Jason Johnson. They'll look at how local routines have changed during the pandemic. And trust me, our routines are going to change radically when it comes to that. Harry, I got only one other thing, as bizarre as it sounds. You know, we went over this thing before with the Super PAC, Club for Growth. And the Reigns, listen to this now. This Club for Growth is supporting this guy Hightower, who is running as a catalyst candidate. Okay. But they, in the midst of this virus and everything, Club for Growth out of Washington sends some people down here that decide they're going to knock on doors in Fairhope during the middle of the virus, recruiting votes for this guy Hightower. Okay, while his opponent, Jerry Carl, who's a county commissioner, is over there in Mobile busting his butt trying to help people. I mean, it is just totally crazy. So I just hope that people in Baldwin County wake up to the fact of what a danger catalyst is. And by looking at some of their actions, it's perfectly obvious.
Well,
All right, I got a few things, dude. So Rain,
BSA.
yeah. So do you remember we were talking about a guy named Michael Hartigan who
Yeah.
ran our council into the ground and then
council president.
parachuted out to the Broken Arrow, Oklahoma council or whatever it is out there?
Right.
Right.
This is the one that Mr. Gary Finch has been pulling his hair out for years, talking to the board, talking to anybody he could get to talking. Nobody would listen to him. And now he's proven, now Mr. Finch is being proven 100% correct in what his assessment was of Mr. Hartigan.
Yeah, so Hartigan got shit canned and with no explanation and no severance. And I hope we had a lot to do with that.
I hope we did too. And Gary Finch, people ought to take their hat off to Gary for sticking his neck out because nobody else on the so-called board did anything.
So in this time of pandemic, all of the county commissioners are tweeting, not necessarily ours, but around the state, are raising hell with the Department of Corrections. The Department of Corrections has ceased taking prisoners from county jails to the state prisons. So all these people that are in there that should have been transferred, the county's having to pay to feed them and clothe them and take care of the medical care and all that. So none of that should surprise you. That's Montgomery's always put it to the counties anytime they could.
Well, the thing with the prisons is, and this could just turn out to be a really horrific situation. That's nothing but a petri dish. Those guys are locked up there together.
A vertical concrete cruise ship. So let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
So Rains, I don't know I don't think you have a license to run a cruise ship, but what kind of tonnage license?
The highest license I held was 100-ton master.
All right, so we've got 2 cruise ships, and of course, none of the cruise ships are flagships or registered here in the United States because they couldn't have enough life rafts and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So they're all Panamanian flagships, or they're Croatian, or who the hell knows.
Right.
So these 2 Holland America ships have been cruising the high seas for 30 days. Nobody will take them. And so for some reason, they're is it Cape Canaveral is where they're going? Isn't that where
Lauderdale, I think.
Okay.
One of the 2.
So they're coming there. They got at least 30 people who I guess they need ICU. They're ambulatory. They're about to die. I mean, I understand it's about compassion, but all those people on that ship are potentially infected. And why would Florida, with the limited number of medical resources they have, take anybody?
Well, one of the reasons that they had to take some of those people is they were American citizens with American passports.
Hey,
And
Paul, they got on a damn cruise ship in the middle of a pandemic.
Well, I know, but
you didn't go to Thailand, did you?
You have certain rights as an American citizen. Being denied entry into your country is one that
except for a state of emergency in a time of pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you. You can limit if they had a communicable disease. That's the reason they ask you all these questions when you come through customs, Paul. You can exclude an American citizen if they're contagious. And I know because my granddaddy died in the Ukraine in 1995, and that was a hell of a deal just to get his body back in the country.
Well, I can imagine.
So, Rains, did you know that openly gay and totally fantastic Apple CEO Tim Cook is a Baldwin County boy?
I did not.
Yep. He just personally donated 100,000 surgical masks and 100,000 N95 masks to the state of Alabama.
Fantastic.
Not that we deserve it, but we certainly do appreciate it. A couple other things. I know someone very close to me who has lupus, and one of the drugs that they use to treat lupus is chloroquine,
Right.
or hydrochloroquine, and it's an anti-malarial drug. She's been taking it for a long time, and guess what, boys? You can't find it anywhere.
Because everybody panicked and went and rushed it and bought it. And now the people that really need it can't get it.
Or it's being diverted. I mean, it's just like everything else in this just-in-time environment. Nobody ever thought, oh, well, if we need an N95 mask, we can just order them off Amazon.
I wonder if that's the same. I wonder if that's the same drug we took in Vietnam.
Yeah,
it is.
Sure it is.
It is the same one. Yeah.
The big pill.
Yeah, and I remember then we had the halazone. Boy, that made water taste good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, that made water taste good.
So just for the record, our governor just closed the non-essential businesses in this county or in this state on Saturday.
Right.
And this is the following Friday. So we've not been in the grocery. You can still go to the grocery store. Let's see, what all has Mobile done? They've instituted they can only have 40% of the fire code capacity of people in somewhere like Walmart or something like that. But now, of course, that's what that's caused is a big line around the building with everybody standing, on top of each other in the parking lot waiting to get in the store. I don't know what the right answer is. We've been doing curbside, if anything. And
I think within the as soon as possible, I hope.
And you ought to see the damn production that Doodle does when we get stuff home. We put it on the table outside, and she sprays it with Lysol, and then everything goes in the sink and gets cleaned again. And you can imagine.
I think probably, of course, this is unscientific, just what I'm saying, but I mean, I'm thinking that the greater portion of this is not transferred by goods, but by individual to individual.
But okay, so let's talk about this. The president who hates fake news can't tell the country we're in deep shit. Can't tell us that he's sending all these ships. We're just burning gas, guys. They're out there shrimping so they don't come home and get sick. But instead, he turns it and spins it into this big war on the cartels in the Caribbean. It's politics as usual when we have in a real scary situation, and that's what I don't like about it.
Well, the war on drugs was a farce, is a farce, and
is a farce.
It's always been a farce. Just a complete waste. All we do is we divert or control maybe 10 to 15%. That's it. We're not doing it. And when I went to school, and it was at Southern, and my father was the professor of economics there, and I was taking his class, which was a little weird in itself. And one day they started
flunk you? That's the real question. Did you pass?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But he, at that point in time, and this was way back in the 70s, he said decriminalize drugs. He said take the money out of it, and you won't have the effort by the cartels. And as you see, as we decriminalize certain drugs, they switch to another drug. So I don't know what the answer is there, but I can tell you, going down to Central America and trying to stop boats coming across the ocean, you're getting very, very, very few of them. Very few of them at all. What you got up there, Harry?
I'm just showing people how to volunteer with the Red Cross. This is their webpage, and of course the menu. So if you have an opportunity and you're looking for something to do, it might not be during the actual pandemic, but certainly during the recovery, the Red Cross is always actually they have a seat at the table in every emergency management operations center in the country because they're a vital part of response and recovery, and hopefully preparation in this case. Maybe they're the only ones with proper PPEs.
My money's on no.
All right, guys. Well, Reigns, I want to know what's going on in Houston. Tell me what are the state of things?
We are under a county-wide lockdown order. All non-essential businesses are closed, restaurant and bar, et cetera, pickup only. And they're expanding that order on a regular basis to include different businesses as more and more people just keep doing what they're doing. We have our schools effectively closed until May 1st for the entire county, including Humble ISD, my son's school district, which is the largest independent school district in the country. They have yet to cancel school for the year, but my information is that check is in the mail. I can tell you for one that my son won't be returning to school until this is all over with. And if that's December, then that's December. He can continue Captain Russian's semester at sea until such time as I deem it safe for him to go back to school.
Right.
Houston is Houston. People are, for the most part, abiding by it. The suburbs is a different story. I'm telling you right now, you want to know what the state of Houston is? I don't know, but I can tell you what the state of my house is. See this right here? I'm sitting in my garage sharpening this thing on a regular basis. I'm sharpening it. All you folks out there that don't believe in social distancing and want to go to church and then come over to knock on my door or whatever, I got a little something waiting for you, and it's that thing right there. You spread misinformation, you talk that crap, you wave that stupid banner. Believe me, when it's all over with, people like me ain't going to forget who you are. Remember that?
One of the things that I
like
wrote,
a knife that's perfectly balanced, like the Bussy Combat.
it looks like the old K-bar.
Yeah, it's full tang.
Well,
Like the K-bar.
I hope people will go to the ripreport.com backstory podcast, either on the podcast itself or the Facebook page, and stay up with the information we're trying to provide. You got something you want to let us speak about, be sure and get a hold of us. We hope that you're patient with our production here. We're having to do it a lot differently. We finally got set up in our studio, and as soon as we got it set up in the studio, we got hit with this. So now we're having to do this using technology, and I, for one, am not contributing to that factor. So we'll just see where it goes from there. And Reigns, I didn't know you had a 100-ton license. I did too.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I was running diving charters out of Panama City. But
I had a 6-pack. They'll give anybody one of those, obviously.
Mine lapsed back in like 2006, I think, and I didn't have any sea time to renew it, so I let it go.
well,
But,
you know, at one time when I got mine issued to me, it was supposed to be lifetime, and then they came in and limited it.
yeah, you gotta maintain X amount of days.
Right.
You renew it, and I didn't have the sea time, and that was that. But I
Yeah.
mean, I could sit for it today. I could sit for it today and pass the test. That's true, but
Yeah.
I'll never use it, so why go through the point? I mean, I live 160 miles from the Gulf of Mexico now, so
Yeah, it's a diploma on the wall for me now.
yeah, same. Well, I lost mine to Katrina, so what are you going to do? I don't even have that anymore. But it's a fine time. I hope everybody's up. And speaking of staying up, I'll be on Facebook Live later tonight for the Friday Night Fiasco. If anybody wants to tune in and check out that debacle.
If anybody can stay up till midnight to watch that debacle,
That's
that's
gonna
the problem.
say, that's 3 hours past my bedtime.
That's why we do it late at night, because when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro, by God, as my friend Dr. Thompson once said, weirdos, the professionals, are out around midnight, and I can't wait to see them when they're on.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I've got a list of bizarre and absurd questions to ask.
Perfect. That's what I need, man.
All right.
All right, boys. Well, I certainly appreciate everybody participating, and everybody stay safe out there.
Okay. You too. God bless everybody.
See y'all next time.
Especially our first responders.